favorite movie scenes, not the whole movie, just this one scene, is the ending of the 1968 version of The Planet of the Apes. Maybe because it was the first time I could go to an adult movie. I don't know. But if you probably have seen it on TV. It shows quite often. There's Charlton Heston, and he is on horseback riding along this deserted shoreline, and you're wondering what's going on. And then up ahead, there's something large there. You can't quite see what it is because of the camera work. You know, they were pretty artful back then, even without the computer stuff. And the audience can't make it out what it is. And then there's Heston, and he dismounts from the horse. And he falls to his knees on the sand. And very quietly, he says to himself, I'm back home after all. And then he screams up to heaven, and he says, you maniacs! You blew it up after all! And then the camera pans out, and there's half of the top half of the Statue of Liberty on the shoreline, just rusting away into nothingness. And then you realize that the planet of the apes is planet Earth, centuries after some apocalypse that swept human civilization away. I don't know, maybe there was something about the scene I kind of like blown up movies. Okay, there's a lot of apocalyptic blown up movies being made these days. And the special effects have gotten to be so much better than they were back in '68. All, because of computers and all that kind of thing. And the effect of blowing up Earth's famous landmarks has gotten so much better too. You've got the explosion of the U.S. Capitol in Independence Day. I think that's still one of our boys' favorite movies. And of course, the line between fantasy and reality has been forever blurred because of September 11th, 2001, and the Twin Towers falling when our country was attacked. So here we've got this lesson from Luke, and it's about the Temple of Jerusalem. And the Temple of Jerusalem represented for Israel just what our capital represents for us here in the United States. The temple was the power and presence of God among God's people. Now, you probably don't realize it, but the rebuilding of this second temple had not yet been completed in Jesus' day. It wasn't until almost 30 years after Jesus ascended into heaven that it was completed. The year, as we kind of mark it, was 64 AD. And 6 years later, in 70 AD, the Romans destroyed the temple, and they slew thousands upon thousands of Jews in an attempt to put down a rebellion. So in today's gospel, Jesus predicts the temple's destruction. In a sense, he's giving to the people who are listening to him a description of one of those movies that I loved. But for the Jews of the day, they didn't love it. Not one stone will be left upon another, he told them. All will be thrown down. And so here we are at the end of the church year, and the scriptures call upon us to consider our mortality and the fragility of everything we create, of everything we might be tempted to rely upon. Like many times in the past, we are living in a great age of uncertainty. The institutions that we have relied upon seem fragile. Maybe some of you saw the article in the Buffalo News yesterday that showed that the church is losing ground in contemporary America. And so we're tempted, because these institutions that we've relied upon seem to be a little shaky. So we're tempted to pull back. We're tempted to rely on our own ingenuity, to stockpile our own personal wealth, to see strangers as threats to our own security. We're not sure if we're living in the last days. Now, St. Paul and the first generation of Christians were living through the experience of the end of their world. It began with the destruction of the temple, the scattering of Jesus' followers across all the ancient world, and St. Paul had a consistent message for those who called Jesus as Lord. He told them in the words of 2 Thessalonians 3, "Brothers and sisters, do not be weary in doing what is right." And I think this is solid advice for today as well as those in ancient days. As the anxiety of the world increases and the change and decay in society becomes more apparent and uncertain futures, who better is there to cope with the great need of today than the followers of Jesus Christ? We have a mission to the hungry, to the poor, to the homeless, to the unwanted people of our day. And that fits completely into the agenda that Jesus gave to the church. He told us, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, welcome the stranger, visit the imprisoned, visit the sick, take care of orphans, take care of widows. We're living in a topsy-turvy world where the wealthiest get tax breaks and the poorest get their programs cut. Today, here at St. Paul's, we're asking you to stand up with your money and your resources and pledge your support to the church for the coming year. More than ever, there's work to be done, not only in ministering to those in need, but also to educate our children in the way of Christ and helping them to see their responsibility to help those in need. More than ever, we need to make our church a place of worship, a place where we can bring our anxieties and our fears and experience the calm presence of Jesus, who is calm in the midst of all the change that was around him. Never be weary in doing what is right, St. Paul tells us. Now more than ever, we need to listen to the wisdom of his words. Even Martin Luther was so strong on the fact that we are justified in God's sight by our faith, not by our works. And he said so famously, God doesn't need our good works, but our neighbor does. Never be weary of doing what is right. Support our church and the works of God that we do. We may live in uncertain times, but our salvation is never, ever, ever uncertain. In Christ, it is sure.